Welcome back to the news channel of Nghe An Newspaper and radio and television on YouTube platform. Here, we share and interact about the hottest and newest issues that the public at home and abroad is interested in. And here are some notable contents.
On the evening of September 12, former Supreme Court Judge Susila Kaki, 73, was sworn in as interim prime minister, becoming the first female leader to hold the position. Following her proposal, Nepal dissolved parliament shortly after and general elections were scheduled for May 0, 2026. The immediate task for new Prime Minister Susila Kaki is to restore order after protests, while tackling corruption that has been a sore point for many years. Her appointment followed tense negotiations between Army Chief Ashok Raj Sikden, President Ramchandra Paudin and representatives of the Gen's generation. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi sent his best wishes to Ms. Kaki, while affirming New Delhi's firm commitment to the peace, progress and prosperity of the Nepalese people. According to AFP, Ms. Kaki's appointment seems to have been widely welcomed by the public. Nepal has its first female prime minister, said Suraji Bhattarai, 51, a social worker. We believe that the prime minister, a former convict, will solve Nepal's corruption problem and provide better governance. Dugga Mega, 23, who works at a shop in CMU, stressed that the decision to have a caretaker government is good. Corruption is the main problem for people right now, especially the youth. It doesn't matter if the Gen Z or anyone older in politics solves the problem, as long as it stops. Protests erupted in Nepal on March 8 when mostly Gen Z protesters took to the streets to protest the government's social media ban and corruption. At least 51 people were killed and 1,300 injured. Many buildings, including the Parliament building, were set on fire, causing severe damage. Under pressure from the protests, Prime Minister Kata Prasit Samali resigned. The ban on 26 unregistered social networks in the country was also lifted. According to AFP news agency on 13th, the situation in the capital CMD gradually returned to normal. The army's presence on the streets was reduced, markets reopened, traffic was smooth and many families went to temples. However, the security situation still has many potential risks due to the escape of more than 12,500 prisoners during the recent wave of protests.
At a press conference in Poland, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said that the incident of VA and NATO shooting down UAVs flying into Polish airspace showed that the alliance still did not have a truly effective way to deal with these airborne threats to MR. Zelensky warned the West not to rely too much on expensive anti-aircraft missiles to deal with the cheap, long-range attack UAVs that are flooding the battlefield. On 10th, Poland recorded at least 19 UAVs flying into its airspace. In the incident, NATO aircraft, including Dutch F-35 fighters stationed in Poland, were urgently scrambled to respond, and Sava also put PUS missile complexes on combat readiness. The Ukrainian leader said that a PUS missile costs $2 to $3 million while a UAV costs only $100,000, meaning that one cannot be used to fight the other. The interception effort appears to have involved conventional anti-aircraft munitions. Social media footage showed Poles returning to the missile launch plane and finding the remains of at least one AIM-120 Abraham, a medium-range air-to-air missile that costs about $1.20 million. The NATO strike also involved the AIM-9 Swinder, a short-range air-to-air missile that costs $400,000. Zelensky said they used missiles that cost $1 million to $1.2 million. That is not the way to do it. Of course, everything needs to be done to keep people safe. But in general, in terms of understanding what it means to fight, that is not the way. In his speech, Zelensky said Ukraine had offered to help and train MON and other NATO countries in how to intercept low-cost UAVs. He said that and our anti-ballistic missiles, not to stop low-cost UAVs. Over the past year, Ukraine has adapted to UAV attacks by deploying a coordinated defense layer that includes vehicle-mounted machine guns, electronic warfare, interceptor UAVs, and even helicopters to hunt UAVs. Ukraine has traditionally relied on modern air defense missiles and Red Earth for Russian ballistic and cruise missiles. Mr. Zelensky calls this a multi-layered air defense system and recommends that NATO learn to apply this strategy. The Ukrainian president said he is in talks with the Polish leadership, Britain, Italy, and NATO officials to form a mid-air defense system. On the other hand, on 12th, General Alex Green-Quick, NATO's supreme allied commander in Europe, said he believed the operation to shoot down UAVs flying into Polish airspace was successful. "I think it was a highly successful operation, as we were able to intercept the UAVs using the Dutch F-35s and other assets involved," said Green-Quick. He added that this and similar situations would help NATO identify ways to improve its effectiveness in the future. He also said he did not want NATO soldiers to think about how much their weapons cost. "I want them to protect our citizens."
The Russian state news agency TASS reported that a UAV control unit will be located hundreds of kilometers away from the front lines, operating remotely at a safe distance using artificial intelligence technology. In the current conflict, UAV operators are prime targets for UAV and artillery attacks. Ukraine has even created a frontline scoring system that assigns points to attacks on Russian soldiers operating UAVs. These points will then be converted into new weapons. The new Russian technology will allow operators to avoid having to get close to the battlefield to become targets and actually work from home. The key technology is a system called Orbita developed by the non-profit organization KUST, founded in 2024. KUST supplies Skaverat UAVs, jammers, and other technologies to forces participating in Russia's military campaign. KUST CEO Andrei Bezakop said they are a coalition of more than 200 startups and manufacturing partners working together to quickly get finished products to the front line. This rapid pace has led to significant successes in KUST's UAV development, including the highly lethal Prinvanon fiber optic UAV. On the front line, a soldier assigned to a UAV backpack will occasionally pop out of hiding, deploy the UAV, press a button, and quickly return. We have previously seen Russian soldiers carrying FPV UAVs close to Ukrainian lines to launch them at close range, exposing their operators. This new version allows operators to operate at great distances, even from Moscow. Alexander Sadyakin, a member of the KUST board, said this is a leading example of how innovation directly enhances the capabilities of soldiers. It allows them to operate more effectively and safely. The unit will use the Skaverat UAV and a radio relay link with the Orbita system. According to the manufacturer, the Orbita uses AI and neural network algorithms to help the operator identify, track, and destroy targets. They claim that the Orbita reduces the training time for FPV pilots from 4 weeks to just 1 hour. This suggests that the Orbita has a high level of automation, with remote operators monitoring, directing, and approving targets rather than directly controlling the UAV, and will not require a continuous radio link. Russia has previously deployed some AI-powered UAVs, but this is a new level if it works as claimed. As of December 2024, KUST has delivered more than 30,000 UAVs to the front line. These UAVs are likely to be the Skaver, which is described as having a range of 8 kilometers with a 3.6 kilograms warhead or 13 kilometers with a 2.7 kilograms payload. By the end of 2024, the original version was supplemented by a new model with a thermal camera, a reusable reconnaissance variant. The Skaver Z with automatic target lock and the Skaver Pro are said to have a series of automatic functions that allow an unskilled soldier to control it. KUST recently launched a naval variant of the Skaver, designed to launch from an unmanned boat. This suggests that KUST is familiar with launching and operating UAVs remotely.
Amid the ongoing Ukraine-Russia conflict, the complex diplomatic relations between major countries are becoming increasingly evident. Recently, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made a remarkable statement, publicly supporting the U.S. idea of imposing tariffs on countries importing Russian oil, including India. This move comes even as New Delhi is actively promoting diplomatic efforts to find a peaceful solution to the conflict. In an interview with ABC News, President Zelensky asserted, "I think the idea of imposing tariffs on countries that continue to implement agreements with Russia is a good idea." The statement came after Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) summit where he met with President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping. This shows the disagreement between Kiev and New Delhi despite India's diplomatic efforts. Mr. Zelensky's comments came in the context of Washington considering new sanctions against Moscow. U.S. President Donald Trump has also announced his readiness to expand the sanctions. U.S. National Economic Council Director Kevin He's made a direct reference to India, saying that we have a responsibility to ensure that sanctions are enforced and those who are helping Russia in the war with Ukraine. For example, what India has done by buying Russian oil. We are ready to respond to them economically. These statements indicate the economic pressure that the U.S. is likely to exert on countries to continue to maintain energy trade with Russia. While facing pressure from Washington and the KF's tough stance, India is trying to balance its need to ensure its energy security with its role as a mediator. PMMI has spoken to President Zelensky twice on the phone, reaffirming India's stance that an early and peaceful solution is necessary. Foreign Minister Sra Maniyam Janka also stressed India's desire for a lasting peace in discussions with his Ukrainian counterpart India. However, there is a contradictory fact that India, the country that is being criticized for importing Russian oil, is the largest supplier of diesel to Ukraine itself. According to Ukrainian oil market tracker Naftrenix, in July 2025, India accounted for 15.5% of Ukraine's oil imports, up significantly from 1.9% in the previous month. 7 years 2024. India exports an average of 2,700 tons of diesel to Ukraine every day. This data shows that although Washington has imposed a 50% tariff on Indian goods in protest at the purchase of Russian oil, this fuel is playing an important role in maintaining Ukraine's wartime economy. The current situation puts India in a difficult position. On the one hand, it must maintain relations with Russia to ensure affordable energy supplies, an important factor for its growing economy. On the other hand, it needs to maintain its diplomatic position and avoid direct confrontation with Western powers, especially the United States. India's import of Russian crude oil and supply of diesel to Ukraine shows a complex and interdependent trade network where the lines between politics and economics are blurred. President Zelensky's public support for imposing tariffs on India, together with strong signals from the United States, complicates New Delhi's diplomatic efforts. It raises questions about the effectiveness of mediation when the economic and political interests of the parties are not aligned. In addition, the U.S.'s controversial imposition of tariffs on countries importing Russian oil shows the West's determination to put economic pressure on Moscow. However, it could also create unintended consequences, weakening diplomatic efforts and creating new rifts in international relations.